What's a Gouda event without a special limited edition Berserker? Hello everyone, Soberoni of GNA Reviews here, bringing you a servant spotlight for Kaudia's #1 tea brewing grandma, Sen no Rikyu. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers at how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 5-star servants. So if you're ready to learn some proper tea etiquette, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and ring my bell, so you can catch all of these servant spotlights as they go up, and you can help out the channel. And now, on to Sen's stats. Sen has a max HP of 12,028, which is low even by Berserker standards, and a max attack of 12,463, which becomes 13,709 due to her Berserker class modifier. Sen has an abysmal HP stat for a 5-star servant, however, she does make up for it by having significantly larger attack, as expected of a Berserker. When it comes to her command cards, Sen has 5 hits on her quick card, 3 hits on her arts, 3 hits on her buster, and 5 hits on her extra card. She has an NP gain rate of 0.7% and a star rate of 4.9%. Both her NP gain and star generating are really strong due to her triple quick deck with high hit counts, as well as her ridiculously high NP gain rate. Overall, Sen has the usual Berserker glass cannon stat spread with high attack and low HP, but unlike most Berserkers, she also has some good utility stats on both her star generating and NP gain. Taking a look at her skills, Sen's first skill is Simplicity at its finest, rank A-. This skill increases the party's quick card effectiveness for 3 turns, between 10 and 20%. It also increases the party's NP gain rate for 3 turns, also between 10 and 20%, and it generates between 5 and 15 crit stars, all of these effects depending on level. Her second skill is a Single Flower, rank B. This skill charges one ally's NP gauge between 20 and 30% depending on level. It'll also increase their NP overcharge by 2 stages, and it grants them invincibility for 1 attack. And finally, Sen's last skill is Mysterious Profundity of Black, rank A. This skill increases her own crit damage for 3 turns between 30 and 50%. It further increases the crit damage of her quick cards for 3 turns by another 30 to 50%, both of these effects depending on level, and it grants her a special on-hit debuff, which lowers an enemy's defense by 10% for 3 turns every time she hits them with her quick cards. As for her passives, Sen has Madness Enhancement, rank EX, which increases her own buster card effectiveness by 12% and her crit damage by 5%, Territory Creation Wabi, rank A, which increases her arch card effectiveness by 8% and her mental debuff resistance by 20%, Artistic Aesthetic T, rank A, which increases her debuff success rate by 10%, and Unfettered and Flexible, rank B, which increases the NP generating of her quick cards by 10%. Moving on to her deck and Noble Phantasm, Sen has a quick deck with quick, Art Buster, and a quick Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Ichigo Ichie, which is an AoE quick attack that deals damage to all enemies with a damage modifier between 600 and 1000% depending on NP level. It also seals their NP for 1 turn and inflicts curse on them for 5 turns. In addition, this Noble Phantasm will deal additional damage against enemies with the Man attribute between 150 and 200% depending on overcharge. Sen's Ascension mat requirements are a mixed bag. For level Ascension, she's going to need 8 octuplet crystals, 6 black tallow, 9 lamps, and 5 cursed gallbladders. As for her skills, she's going to need a further 9 tallows, 15 octuplet crystals, 24 ancient bells, and 72 ashes per skill. Sen no Rikyu is an interesting servant. She isn't your typical Berserker. Sure, she may have the typical Berserker stat spread of high attack and low HP, but what sets her apart are her very high star generating and NP gain rates. Sen no Rikyu is able to produce a lot of crit stars, as well as spam her NP pretty frequently, thanks in large part to her pure quick deck. I've heard a lot of people call Sen the 5-star Berserker lot, but that's only half true, because unlike Berserker lot, the other half of what makes Sen so unique is the wide range of utility in her skill set, which most Berserkers don't have. Her first skill, Simplicity at its finest, is a charisma-like buff that increases the party's quick card effectiveness and NP gain by 20%, as well as generates a few crit stars. This plays into all of Sen's strengths and forms the foundations of her kit. The buff to both quick and NP gain significantly increases the amount of NP charge that Sen receives from her quick cards, which is already higher than average to begin with. Furthermore, the quick buff and crit stars do help her with supercharging her star generating, so this skill simultaneously sets Sen up as both an NP spammer and crit star generator for the team. It also happens to be an AoE buff, which gives it even more utility in pure quick teams, where Sen can even fill the role of semi-support or sub-DPS. It's an incredibly flexible and foundational skill despite how underwhelming it may look at first, but it's still arguably not even Sen's strongest skill. That honor belongs to her second skill, a single flower. This skill charges an ally's NP gauge by up to 30%, grants them one hit of invincibility, and increases their overcharge by 2 stages. This is another high utility skill. Man, for a grandma, Sen sure is flexible. The NP charge being targetable does give her the option of being an NP battery on quick farming teams if you lack Scotty. 30% NP charge is actually quite high and can definitely help with looping, but more often than not, you'll want to use this skill on Sen herself, since she's also one of Quick's best NP loopers. This skill combined with mana loading lets Sen set up a free turn 1 NP without the need for any supports, so long as you use a starting NP charge CE. For example, the free one that we're going to get from Sen's own event. The invincibility and overcharge effects are also good. Hard defense on a Zerker is always good to have for survivability, even if it only lasts for 1 hit. And increasing Sen's overcharge can lead to a lot of extra damage in some matchups, but more on that later. For now, let's look at Sen's final skill, Mysterious Profundity of Black. This skill increases Sen's crit damage by 50%, her quick crit damage by another 50%, and then gives her attacks the ability to inflict 10% defense down on enemies. This is Sen's only selfish skill, and it's quite the strong one. Her deck is almost entirely made up of quick cards, so for the most part, this is functionally a 100% buff to crit damage on a Zerker, which is bananas. But on top of that, being able to inflict a stacking defense down on enemies to soften them up for more damage is also insanely good. This single skill makes Sen highly viable as a main DPS in challenge quests, especially in some card locking gimmick teams with Summer Ibuki. Since if you can get 3 quick cards locked in, Sen can absolutely go off and do insane burst damage over those 3 turns. The only downside to the skill is that as a Berserker, Sen has almost no star weight, so you need to rely on a strong star absorb buffer or just consistently produce 50 crit stars every turn to make the most use out of it. Thankfully, Sen can be very good at the latter. For skill leveling priority, make sure you level her NP charge first since it's pivotal for farming, followed by her quick buff, and then her crit buff last. For her pen skills, mana loading is a must, followed by cooldown reduction and then crit damage. Sen's Noble Phantasm is an AoE quick attack that seals all enemies' NPs, inflicts curse, and can deal additional damage to man attribute enemies with overcharge. Sen's Noble Phantasm is a perfect encapsulation of her damage and utility in one raw attack. From a damage perspective, this Noble Phantasm can be very strong. There are a lot of man attribute servants, and with the ability to buff her own overcharge, Sen can hit for quite a bit of damage in the right situations. But from a utility standpoint, an AoE Noble Phantasm seal is crazy good to have, especially on an NP that is easily loopable. It's possible to completely stall out enemies for multiple turns on Scotty teams when Sen can just repeatedly loop her NP. The NP seal combined with her high burst damage potential from her crit buffs makes Sen a highly viable DPS to build around in harder content. But make no mistake, Sen's bread and butter is farming. Naturally, her NP battery and good NP gain make her an excellent NP looping candidate and farmer in Scotty teams. Her looping is also highly consistent, and as a Berserker, she has the advantage of dealing extra damage against 99% of the enemies in the game. So you can safely bring her to farm just about any node in the game without having to worry about class advantage. Very similar to what Summer Ibuki and Morgan do for Arts and Buster. But before we go over the deep end singing her praises, it's important to keep in mind that Sen is not Ibuki or Morgan. Unfortunately, Quick is still Quick. And while she may be an excellent quick farmer, she has a lot of competition. When it comes to quick servants, there is no shortage of strong, consistent NP loopers like Summer Okita and Karen, and even Summer Scotty herself, all of whom are just as consistent, if not more so than Sen, and in some cases can even deal more damage. Also, while Sen is capable of farming with Black Grail in some setups, there are some heavy limitations and requirements for it to work, so she isn't anywhere near as consistent as a top tier Buster or Arts farmer. All that being said though, Sen is still an elite quick servant, so you will want to pair her with either regular Scotty or preferably Ruler Scotty for farming setups. She absolutely needs them to farm effectively. Otherwise, if you want to use her more as a main DPS for story or challenge quests, pair her with servants who can either significantly increase her star absorb and crit damage, like Ranmaru, or servants who can produce a lot of crit stars, like Summer Ibuki, who also has the benefit of being able to lock Sen's command cards for some diabolical plays. Sen's bond CE is like water, like flowers. It increases the party's damage against man attribute enemies by 20%, but it's not worth using due to the poor stats. Instead, give Sen CEs that either bolster her NP damage or grant her starting NP charge like Phantasmal Princess, K-Scope, or Traces of Christmas. If you want to go the crit route, Fist of Hail can be a good choice as well. As for command codes, there aren't any command codes that increase Star Absorb by a significant enough amount for a Berserker, unfortunately, so instead give her a code that generates crit stars like Holy Knight's Aurora Borealis. Overall, Sen occupies an interesting spot in the meta as a strong quick DPS, but one that isn't ultimately necessary. As a farming servant, she is elite. Her NP looping capability in quick teams is very high, and as a berserker, she can plow through almost any farming node with ease. She also makes for a good main DPS in crit teams that are able to produce a ton of crit stars, or a solid sub DPS with her heavy utility, making her a highly flexible option for challenge quests. But despite being strong, she doesn't really do anything to outshine the other top tier quick NP loopers that came before her, and she still doesn't even come close to matching the sheer power and consistency that both Arts and Buster farmers have to offer. With that said, Sen gets an A- from me. Don't get me wrong, Sen is a very strong servant, and one I would easily call top tier, but her mileage varies heavily, and she occupies a niche that is in really low demand right now. Still though, Sen is one of those servants who can suddenly become super meta overnight if Quick ever gets better support, or if she ever gets an NP buff. And those are my thoughts on Sen. She's an interesting servant for sure, and one to definitely keep an eye out for in the future if she ever gets buffed. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over in our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter, all linked in the description down below, and I'll see you all in the next Servant Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.